Hi, good afternoon, all my friends and colleagues here. Post-lunch session is always difficult to hold attention with, but obviously I have a very elite panel and a very interesting topic that we have to deliberate today. But before we start, although we were introduced, I think we should know what our company do. Just to start, I represent Amdocs. Amdocs is a product-led services company in the media and telecom domain. And I personally head India, Cyprus, and global operations. Maybe I can ask Oliver to just talk about 1 minute about the company, what you represent. One more interesting fact about Amdocs, we have 50% of worldwide, in terms of the headcount worldwide Amdocs presence in India. So we are one of the largest GCC from that perspective. Olivier.
Okay, so Fauracia is a group that is an automotive supplier, a tier one, catering for all the OEMs in the world. We are present worldwide. We are 150,000 people plus company, 27 billion turnover. We are 6,000 in India. We have been here since 2004, and we do a lot of offshoring studies as well as producing in India components, automotive components, for the local market.
Thank you. Chander.
Brillio is a digital transformation company. We started about 10 years ago. We said we want to solve only digital as our primary problem. The whole focus around industries in terms of banking, finance, healthcare, life sciences, consumers, and high tech is where our primary focus is. We serve the global market. We are heavily based in both Bangalore and Pune, along with other locations.
Thank you. Narayana.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is NP Narayana Prasad. I come from Zensar, and Zensar is one of the mid-sized IT services company headquartered in Pune. I wear two hats. One, I'm a CTO of the organization, and I also head the AI data business, which also includes AI for the company.
So as you can see, I have a very diverse group of leaders from diverse industry, which should make the panel discussion pretty interesting. Just to start, generative AI is being leveraged across industries and function today, and each sector is coming up with their own use cases of generative AI to enhance their operational efficiency and productivity at the back end, but at the same time, using it in the front end to increase their reach and enhancing customer experience. As we have a very interesting topic in terms of AI and future of innovation. So let me jump straight away into asking my elite panelist my first question. So anyone of you start. How do you see AI fundamentally transforming traditional business models in your respective industries? And if you could share a specific example where AI has driven significant change.
So I will start. So our industry is a mechanical and electronic industry. So we are user of AI at the moment, and for the moment, this is not a fundamental reorganization that we are doing, but we are doing on a Kaizen way for the moment. So we are doing a lot of use cases for them still, and but we are putting ourselves together to get a proper organization for that with the governance and making sure that we focus our resources in the impactful topics and making sure that in the end it gives us more efficiency and it gives us additional revenue. So if I could mention one example, there is one thing that was quite easy to implement. It's to use AI in the RFQs that we receive from the OEMs that we work with. Generally, because this is very technical, what we receive is a huge file of documents, so with sometimes several hundreds of documents that the team in charge of RFQ has to go through compared to the previous version, to the similar products we have been doing before. So here, AI has been a tremendous help in accelerating the analysis of the document and really pinpointing what are the main difference and the important point that we have to focus on to answer the RFQ, to answer to the product needs that are expressed in this RFQ. So this is the main point.
If I can just pick up on what Oliver spoke, I think AI has been there for long, but I think the generative AI, what it has done is, the example Oliver talked about in terms of its applicability within his industry, kind of frames us into essentially, I would say, 4 segments. One, you will have to look at what I would call as your business transformation area. That's where you could apply this in the context of, for example, Oliver talked about automobiles. I could apply this in the context of my banking customers, so on and so forth, right? So that's your AI, the business layer of it. What we are seeing more and more is AI being used in engineering, right? Where you're able to trying to get out of legacy systems, modernize to new world. We get many customers requesting to move out of mainframes, legacy codes, Javas, to the latest microservices, so on and so forth. So that's the second applicability layer that I would say you see AI being used. The third layer is largely around software engineering, right? Like as developers, as engineers, can I use this to basically make my life productive? Like, the RFQ example Oliver talked about. That's a good example where you're able to bring a shift-left behavior in your SDLC cycle itself. So that's your third layer. And I would say the fourth is the operations layer. So to the impact, Rajat, the question that you asked is, I would say the business transformation, the software engineering, and then, of course, the operations would be the 3 big areas where we definitely see a lot of value add and impact of the AI.
Definitely. Narayan?
I think Chander and Oliver covered quite a bit of stuff. I'll just try to cover a little bit in addition what we are seeing. Fundamentally, as I think Chander was trying to show, I look at AI as AI for business and AI for technology. Given the fact that we are in the IT services company, I'll take a couple of examples or one example which is impacting us or how we are getting benefited. He was talking about AI for engineering. We earlier used to look at the productivity of an engineer through a story point or function point, so on and so forth. And we used to size a particular work, it would take X hours or X weeks kind of stuff. Today, I think we have matured into a state where instead of, along with the engineer, we can have a companion. And together that, I think we can deliver anywhere between 30 to 50% of the productivity gains, which fundamentally shifts our business model. And that is here to stay, and it is only going to improve. And that, I would say, is the basic construct or one of the basic construct in terms of how AI is impacting our business model. And rest, I think we can build on as the discussion goes by.
Olivier, maybe I'll come to you next. You are from the automotive industry. How is AI influencing smart mobility solutions and the future of connected vehicles? And are there any particular innovations you are excited about?
Yes, so there is one product that we have put on the market, which is called e-mirror. So you see when you're driving your car, you have left and right mirrors. So this is on the market already in Europe, yes, Europe and China. And you replace the side mirrors with cameras. So what do you do with that? Obviously, you have 2 small displays on each side of the interior of the car so that you can see what's going on. But the idea here is to use the camera that is facing rearward to enhance the vision of what's going on at the rear. So we are combining those 2 side cameras with the rear one that many cars have now, for reverse parking. And so we can display to the driver on the 2 side screens the look of what's behind the car as if the car was transparent. And so with this stitching of the rear camera image and the side camera image is being done with the help of AI and giving a broad view of the rear of the car, and so eliminating the dead angles that you have in many conditions. On top of that, we do some image processing, again, using AI to enhance the vision when you have difficult conditions like fog, night, Here we can already identify if there is a bike that is going to overtake you on the wrong side, by the way. And this is easy to do using this technology. So it enhances the safety of the car, the driving condition, and so the peace of mind of the driver.
That's really interesting.
And I could give a second example, and this would be more in the plant side. So we do seats. So we build seats, and the seats, you know, most of them have a fabric cover, and you know, depending on the tolerances of fabrication, etc., you can get a crease, a wrinkle, and so. And this is, maybe you don't know, but people have an iron at the end of the line, and they iron the cover in order to make things flat and remove the wrinkle. And so a robot has been developed, looking at the seat, identifying the wrinkles, etc., and then putting the iron really where it's needed. And so we have this kind of feature in our plants now. Obviously, AI played a role because we had to train the machine and to do some machine learning to identify what is a wrinkle, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And well, it was interesting because on top of that, we forced the plant to produce bad parts in order to train the robot, you know, and so that was interesting.
Very interesting. I never knew that our car seats are ironed, and now they'll be ironed by robots. Narayan, coming to you. Given your leadership in AI, how is Zensar leveraging AI to drive business strategy and improve operational efficiency? And are there any specific use cases where AI has brought significant impact?
Sure. I think majority of the people can actually look back at a decade. We used to have this called digital first, mobile first kind of stuff. Now I think for the last few years, everybody is talking about AI first. And without AI, nothing sells. I'm sure all of you are aware. So jokes apart, when this disruption started, I think we went back and looked at all our offerings and where it can have a potential impact and what can we do to guard ourselves against that. So based on that, the specific offerings where it had an impact, we actually changed it. That's the first response to that. And then, you know, what is that working backwards? If this is what our customers are going to get impacted, this is what the services are going to get impacted, and what are we going to do about it? That's how we went about strategizing, using AI as an aid to ensure that one, we don't get disrupted, second, we get benefited. If I had to take a simple example, connecting to my earlier response, there were specific deals and projects which we used to do at, let's say, X amount of dollars. Now we have in fact, a couple of projects for the same size, probably at around 0.7x and 0.6x, which is a significant benefit depending on if you retain the profit to ourselves or we can pass back some of the productivity to the clients. And that is the fundamental shift I was talking about in terms of the business model. And that is for the, what we deliver for the clients. If I had to talk about our own internal usage of AI, how it is benefiting our own employees, anything on the sales side, especially the knowledge capture, because people churn is so much. In most of the organizations today, 50% of the people are new. They all joined in the last 2 to 3 years. So there is no heritage of the resident knowledge. How do we tap into AI to get that and ensure that the person who has joined new has at least sufficient knowledge of the processes and of the or the past deals and things like that? That's one side. Second, even some of the other internal operational processes, we have used AI to increase operational efficiency. Time permitting, I'll talk about a few of them.
Sure. Chander, coming to you, your organization serves BFSI sector, which is pretty regulated from that perspective. Can you share some of the challenges and strategies for integrating AI into this more traditional, I should say, or I should say more deeply regulated sector?
It's a very interesting question, Rajat, right? I think one of the things that we always think is BFSI, or even any regulated industry, even the healthcare, for example, we consider them as being very close, probably old tech. While that most of it is true, But what we have also seen is adoption of some of the newer technologies is very, very high. In fact, most of our healthcare, life sciences customers and BFS customers are the ones who actually adopt AI a lot more faster than where you would expect them to, the non-regulated industries, right? So if I take the BFS as a sector, and probably this applies to multiple other places, but within the regulated business, I think one of the key things is around regulations, compliances, how do you basically ensure that you're trying to bring in a technology, how is it going to impact, let's say, the local laws of the land, right, so on and so forth. So those are the big part of the criticality that comes in. But I think in any industry, if you ask, I don't know how many of you from a security background, if I ask the question, which is the weakest link in a software field, I would say it's the people. And what we see is, in terms of behaviors, either you see one extreme of people who are very motivated to engage and drive, and there are other side which is basically very conservative, right? So it's a mindset shift in terms of how you adopt. So it's more that, and that basically then triggers off, I could be part of a bank, but I could still, use a lot of the newer technologies, right? So I think it's the demystification of AI that needs to happen, and the applicability of, and bringing the pragmatism into how you bring in some of these use cases, right? So one example within the BFS sector, for example, we work with, a big bank that basically drives a lot of the loans and originations within the automobile industry. One of the key things is when a loan closure happens, especially like a lease, which is typically the North American behavior, what happens to the lease, right? Is the closure happening? Is the person going to return the car back? Is the person going to buy it? Or is the person going to buy another one, exchange it for a new one? How do you keep that loyalty? How do you engage that person through that course, that driving the customer experience so that the person continues to operate and engage with the same bank, the same financial institution for the next set of vehicles, right? I think it's a big, I would say a break that can happen. And by using AI, what we've been able to do is bring that customer experience heavy. And we have been able to identify and say where the experiences are breaking, how do we bring that experiences and drive that experience. Then you start driving loyalty more and more. So that's one example. We can talk more, but I thought that's a good example for us to talk from a banking.
Thanks. That is really a nice example. Narayan, maybe I'll start with you and Oliver, and you can chip in. We have heard a lot about ethical considerations in terms of AI and ethical use of AI. What ethical consideration do you prioritize when you are implementing AI solutions? And how do you ensure responsible AI usage in your organization?
I think that's one of the things which is actually bugging everybody, or something which everybody is concerned about. And also keep the lawyers happy, or in terms of on their toes, just to ensure that your brand is protected. And again, on a lighter side. But what we are doing, I will take what we're doing and then come to specific answer to that question. We have actually developed what we call as a responsible AI framework. It's fairly comprehensive in terms of covers 8 different aspects of what goes into, any AI product, right? Right from the data, what it goes, then how do you build it, how do you operate it, how do you train it, entire aspects of building that product is being evaluated, and the concerned person who is building that, and the product owner or the product manager has to tell that this is the steps what we have used. What we have fundamentally done is the entire answers are again evaluated either by human, or we have in fact automated for the AI himself to evaluate and flag off that these are the potential risks which can cause a problem at a later point in time. So typically what we have observed is most of these things are done at the launch of the product, but nobody keeps a track of how it is being done continuously. That is where the stuff is, right? Over a period of time, biases can creep in, a lot of things can creep in. How do you monitor it continuously is the biggest challenge in the industry, what some of us or many of us are trying to address. Now coming back to your earlier question, the ethical aspects. So this is how we are using to do that. And again, the top 1 or 2 things in that ethics is mostly the bias. We have realized that if I pose the same question to multiple AI products, right, which are in the same category, you get different answers. And it's all, again, it's the technology which is speaking, but the bias is coming in because of the way it was trained. And the classic thing was what most of you would have followed in the recent US election. The same question, how different models were responding differently. So that is the biggest thing in terms of the ethical usage of AI, how exactly we are ensuring that knowingly or unknowingly we are injecting bias into the system.
Olivier, you want to refer to that?
Well, in our industry, which is very technical, so the biggest amount of data is obviously technical data. And so in terms of ethics, it is a little bit less sensitive. So this is a little bit easier for us. But when we use a Microsoft Copilot, let's say widely, to do the summary of a meeting, here, for instance, we have the disclaimer at the beginning of the meeting, making sure that everybody inside this meeting, on a Teams meeting, for instance, acknowledge that this is going to be recorded, that they agree that a summary will be made using AI, and if there is somebody who is not in agreement with that, then this is not recorded at all. So we have this kind of thing. In addition, you know that European Union as well as the US, and I think now China is doing it, there is an AI Act. So it gives a framework that anyway we have to stick to. And so this is the way we are following the rules there.
Thank you. Chander?
Yeah, I think Narayana Prasad covered it. I would just say, again, biases or the governance and the monitoring that needs to happen has to be at 3 levels. One is on your data, second is on your processes, and third is on your model. And that's where I think when your models go off, you do like an ensemble that basically drives, you're not working off one model, but you're working across many. That's one way to drive it. Data, you kind of do differentials, you can get federated data. That could be another way to drive it. So I think when you try to look at these 3 segments and ensure that, you try to bring in the compliances, right? I think that kind of works well. And then to Oliver, what you said, the AI Act now I think has come in all of the geographies, right? European Union passed it, as well as America has also given the same thing, right? So I think when you apply this in the context of the geographies and the customers where they work, operate out of, or the locations where they are, I think all of these then becomes your behavior that applies to that context.
Thank you. Olivier, maybe I'll come to you. How important are partnership and collaboration in harnessing generative AI for business model innovations? And are there any collaboration you have pursued?
Yes, so the impact of AI, if we want it to be big, so we have to partner with people who are widely present in our organization. So obviously the natural move was to use Microsoft Copilot. So we started a little bit more than a year ago to collaborate with them. So we had somehow like 300 licenses at the beginning. So that was like a beta testing of what they were doing. So they used our feedback to enhance their product and so correct a lot of bugs and biases as well, by the way, that we have seen. So here we are now deploying it much more widely inside our organization. Another collaboration that we have been using Palantir for manipulating a lot of data that we have. And here they have introduced an option which is Gen AI inside Palantir. And so we are using their infrastructure and their capabilities to extract a lot of pattern predictions, etc., from the data we have.
Thanks. Maybe Chander, I'll come to you. Specifically in India, what do you see as biggest roadblocks to scaling AI initiatives in organization? And how do you think these can be addressed?
See, I think maybe I'll go back to my previous answer that I was giving. Right? I think the biggest thing is a mindset shift. And people in their roles that they are operating in, it could be at different levels. I think it's basically kind of looking at how you want to embrace AI. There's, like I said, right, there are 2 variants that we have seen, and I think Narayana Prasad, you kind of summed it up nicely. Everything is now AI first, right? Everything is a .ai. Everybody wants to, be on this frenzy of basically AI. But now I think it is kind of tempered and it's a lot more real. People are looking at more pragmatic use cases, applying those in the in their own context, and they're seeing the values of some of these coming through. So what I would say is it's more of a mindset shift, really, Rajat, in terms of how you want to bring in AI into usage. And I think, like I segmented those 4 dimensions, we should start looking at what's your quick win, right? And kind of test this out in your own context. Some of the challenges that we have seen, for example, again, in regulated businesses, some of the hyperscaler-led models are not something that they want. They want to use something within their on-premise, within their own infrastructure. So they're open to work with open source models and work off their own premises. So that way the data doesn't go out and so on and so forth. While hyperscalers have actually underwritten the entire thing, right? If at all, for any reason, anything happens because of AI, they are willing to give indemnification, which is unlimited. But even then, I think there is some bit of the challenge that kind of comes in. So what I would say is, with a mindset shift, kind of start small, test things within your context, don't go by hype, apply this and see for yourself. And that basically is the way that we have seen where customers basically start embracing this and people start using AI.
Thank you. We will definitely like this session to be interactive. So if audience have any questions, we have mic that can be circulated around. So just be ready. I'll come back to you, after 1 or 2 questions, so that the mics, can be moved around. Just raise your hand if you want to ask the question to the panelist, and we'll come to you. Meanwhile, in Narayana, as AI becomes more integrated into decision-making processes, how can organization ensure that AI-driven decisions are fair, unbiased, and ethical? What framework or practice do you suggest to mitigate the risk of algorithm bias?
So I think very interesting question. That's something which probably is bothering many of the people who are using it. What I will talk about what we are also doing and what I've seen some of our customers doing. Especially we heard about the processes and how exactly it's impacting and where it is impacting. On the process side, what I've seen is, not many people have actually gone into the 100% AI-based decisioning yet. It is still in terms of the maker-checker stuff. So that is kind of ensuring that whatever AI does, there is a validation happening, which is further training the model and ensuring that it is far more accurate. So most of the decisions today, especially which has an impact, especially in the customer experience or on the brand experience, it is still, there is some amount of human intervention. And if there is a 100% AI intervention, people, what they have done is they've actually gone ahead and erring on the side of the customer. And those are the decisions. Essentially, even if there is a little bit of doubt, it is decided in the favor of the customer. Like for example, if I am processing a return, and if you don't have a human agent to check or verify why that return is happening, by default the companies would say, go for 100% replacement without even bothering to check is it a real claim or it is a partial claim and things like that. So that's what I'm saying in terms of how AI is currently being used. Either you err completely on the customer side or have a maker checker. The second part in terms of you spoke about the ethical, especially in the algorithmic training kind of a stuff. What we are doing and also what I've seen in our customer places, going back to the fundamental aspect of data, which is the training data, we are trying to ensure that the data is fairly representative of the real world. Wherever we have got the data which is representative, either in terms of quality and also in terms of quantity, I think the models are fairly accurate. Where we don't have it and where we have, trying to take only a subset of the representative data, we are having problem, and that's where that maker checker and other elements are being used to fine train the model. So these are the 2-3 things what I've observed, what is being worked today. I'm fairly certain for a period of time the models will become even more smarter and far more accurate for it to give the decisions.
Thank you. Chander, maybe I'll come to you. In uncertain times like economic downturns or global disruption, and some of it is going on as we speak, how can AI be leveraged to enhance resilience and adaptability in businesses? And how do you envision the next phase of AI integration into IT operations?
That's a fantastic question, Rajat. I think the traditional world, until let's say, we have started seeing some of the headwinds that you talked about, has always been around transform, build, and run. I want to go into a transformation engagement. I want to go build net new, and then I want to kind of run that, right? That's been the traditional world. Now, what has happened is with the headwinds that we are seeing over this last year plus, where people have reduce their spends on, transformation type of engagement. And what they have done is, I want to keep my business with lights on. I do not want to overspend my money today, right? And that's where we are seeing a lot of these options. But instead of looking at this with a negative lens, what I would say is look at this with a positive lens. And the way you have to look at this is, don't say transform, build, and run. Say I will run, transform, and build. You can always do a run business, but you can also transform the run business as well, right? And there are methods that we can talk about, like zero-based transformation, so on and so forth, that can drive all of this. So in a scenario like this where you see these headwinds coming through, Rajat, I think it's a good model is to basically kind of sustain what you already have, but use a very iterative model to basically drive that. And that's where when I was giving this example about this whole loan origination and loan closures and how you basically generate more business, it's a question of how you do small changes, quick wins that basically makes the experience much, much better, because that's what today customers expect. Like for example, if let's say our phones, let's say a Vodafone network or an Airtel or an Act, any of these networks go down, for example, our experiences will just go blast. We'll be like, oh, I don't want to go with this guy, I want to move on. And with our portability that we have, we can move on. But I think that's where I see an AI comes in, because today operations is a very thankless job, for people who are probably part of it. You would have seen, you could have done 99.99%, one escalation, one incident, one issue, and then all your life breaks, right? People basically say, you guys don't know how to do this, you're bad, this, so on and so forth. But I think that's where an AI could be a great intervention that can come in and drive value through this process, right? And today, for example, when something breaks, it's very easy for us to say application broke, or network broke, or the infrastructure broke. Bringing in an AI-led observability layer can actually solve a lot of these, right? Correlation between where it broke, how it broke, connecting it to the, the dots. I think those are the areas that I see a lot of value, and those are the places that we are seeing, people starting to embrace these areas.
Thanks. Olivier, maybe I'll ask you the next question. With the increasing role of data in AI, where do you see the balance between proprietary data, because obviously all are concerned about proprietary data, and the need for cross-industry collaboration, particularly when you need large, lots of data for LLMs and those kind of stuff. Should business adopt a more open approach to data sharing to fuel AI innovation, or does this pose too many risks?
Alors, there are two aspects to answer this question. The first aspect is, what value do you put in your data? So the data value is, for an industry, for technology-driven industry, this is the real money and the value of the company. So for us in automotive, the data will be very carefully circumcised into the perimeter of the company and avoid as much as possible any leaks outside, because this is where the value is. And so, if we manage to use the large language models that exist outside and apply it to our data, but keeping it inside our company, this is what we are trying to do, and making sure that the suppliers or the partners we work with stick to this motto and make sure that we keep our knowledge inside. But on the other side, if everybody stays too much concentrated to their own little castle, it's going to be difficult to speak. So there are some initiatives in the automotive industry. One is Catena X, which is in Europe, I think, mostly, where automotive and tier one suppliers try to establish common ground of discussions to define tools and technologies that will be common. So the data will stay proprietary, but the tools and the way to handle them, to handle the data, will be similar in order to get something that can be used in different companies in the same way. And even if the data are different, at least the way they are manipulated is the same, and it's easier for everybody to learn and to progress.
In fact, what you're talking about, if I understand correctly, is the concept of federated learning, where actually the data remains beside the organization, but the insights are shared with the industry so that the models can learn a wider industry base. Do we have a question from the audience? Can you raise hands, anybody?
First of all, thanks a lot for the lovely conversation, a lot to learn. One question which I have is, on one side, there are a lot of regulations which are coming on a constant basis, regulations, legislations. I believe there's about 1,000 plus legislations already in flows on AI globally. On the other front, there are a lot of new methods of hacking into AI, let's say memory takeover, for example, where one of the use cases in the US was somebody had a chat with one of the dealers, Gen AI application, and spoke to them in a way wherein they got a Porsche for $1. And it was a legally binding offer made by the chatbot. So my question for the panel is, what are the practices that you are seeing being put in place to be proactively ahead of these legislations and the new hacking methods coming in around AI? How are you managing that going forward?
I can take the question. See, I think what you asked is a very interesting one. When this whole OpenAI announcement came in a couple of years back, you all know, which was the business which peaked the most? Take a guess. Dark web, hacking, they were the biggest adopters of Gen AI. And the number of hacks that happened by using AI kind of went through the roof, right? So what it comes back, and I think you asked a very pertinent question, is the whole security is a very fundamental element that used to be an NFR before. It is not an NFR anymore, right? It is I would say your core pivot point around how your organization itself needs to operate. And the more with the amount of digital spread and the things that we have today with respect to multiples of channels and so on and so forth, I think it's a very critical dimension that you need to have a security-first approach in terms of how you engage. Now, coming to the question specifically around regulations, I think regulations has been there for many years, right? I think, especially when the regulated businesses, when they operate, they have a very tight controls in terms of how it is done. For example, today when I work in a healthcare segment, and if I have to deploy something, we have to go through a validation process. It's called a validated process. You run through that, and that's when you can deploy something, right? So those are things that continues to be there. But I think what is critical with the question that you asked is to take a security-first approach. AI, any new technology, right? I don't know how many of you know, like a couple of years back, people said metaverse, right? Then digital twins, blockchain, so on and so forth. Every year there will be new tech that will keep coming through. But I think what is useful is using these techs and being pragmatic about how it's applicable in your context, in your use case. And that's where I was going with, look at your quick wins, right? But keep the security fulcrum, in your thinking. So that's, I think, would be the key thing.
Anyone else?
Hey, hi. Ravi this side. Ravi Zambade. Oh, yep. Okay. So basically question for all of you. In today's world, everyone speaking about Gen and everything, right? And people are thinking like most of the people is a black box kind of thing. Sometimes what happens, simple mathematical calculation helps business objective. Maybe satisfy the business satisfaction and everything. But Gen AI right now people are using in such a way that this is our marketing tool. Like for this use case or that use case, we are using this Gen AI or LLM models. So what are your thoughts on this? Because right now people are thinking, initially people are thinking about we require less computation, like simple model for less computation. Nowadays, we are using much computational power for solving simple solutions. So what are your thoughts on this?
So I can add, and probably any of you can, I can start and any of you can add. So I think you have a very valid point. And I think a right catch in terms of understanding the computing, what is required to generate an answer. from a GenAI is far more than probably any other previously used techniques, correct? And today, I don't think people are paying attention to that because more of the hype and, in fact, I'll give a funny incident. Recently, we won a customer primarily because we went and told him that GenAI is not applicable here. He was so happy because rest everybody else had gone ahead and told him that GenAI is what is required to solve a particular business problem. So coming back to the specific question, I think people will, I think Chander specifically spoke about that the hype will slow down and people will start realizing that GenAI is not a mantra for everything and it has to be use case specific. There are use cases where it is applicable. There are use cases which is not applicable. And people will get pragmatic. Second, the moment the economics comes into play, which is still not the case today, automatically your trade-offs will happen and people will start asking about ROI. And the moment economics comes in, it will only survival of the fittest. I would say that is how the industry would evolve because we have seen that happening in most of the models. Ultimately, it will all plateau towards that. Finally, what is that, the economic model and what is the business which is getting benefited from that.
Sorry, this is an engaging discussion, but my timer tells me we are already, time up for us. But I do want to ask one question before I don't want to leave the panel without asking. AI in movies often portrays very futuristic scenarios. Is there any science fiction depiction in AI in the movies or series that you think will actually become a reality?
If I have to go first, I'm a big MI fan. I always feel that, while it is not a science fiction, but what the technology is what they use, ultimately probably people get inspired by that and then go and implement it. And I think that's the reality. But on a science fiction side, I think Star Wars is real.
Chander?
I can tell about what it shouldn't happen. At least, I think the pace at which we are seeing innovations and, some of the examples in terms of cars, what we spoke, I think. But one of the things that I still relate back is this Shia LaBeouf's movie, Eagle Eye. It talks about how AI takes control and then basically, calls random people and makes them to do things. That's something that I do not want to see. None of us should go through something like that. But as long as AI doesn't do all of those and we have the right controls in place, I think I'm good.
Olivier?
I'm more Iron Man guy. So, I would say Jarvis any day. I'm okay with that because it will help a lot of things. But in an ethical way, otherwise it's not good for sure. But yes, Jarvis for sure.
Incidentally, there's a Tom Cruise movie called Minority Report, where AI helps predicts events like crimes before they happen. And I assume we may see that in future. With that, thank you so much. And I learned a lot from the panel. And I hope everyone learned. Thank you so much.